Hi. So I'm making this book for my environmental science class, and I was told I had to read one nonfiction book of my choice, and I chose Eating Animals by Jonathan Foer. And I'll just give you a little background as to why I chose this book. So I grew up in the rural Midwest, and I was very accustomed to farming. I showed cattle, I helped bale hay, I helped garden on the farm. So I knew a lot about, and I do know a lot about farming and how it's changed and what it entails. Then I moved and I started working at the Willie Street Co op, and I was like, this is awesome because it made me way more aware about what I was eating and where our food comes from, and you know, how it's good to eat organically and it's good to eat locally, and how it's good to support these small farmers because now means of farming is more factory instead of how we usually think of it as, a farmer's grabbing his cup of coffee and he's going to go out and he's going to go take care of his livestock and he knows them each individually and he's going to care for them up until the end, when in reality that's not how it is. And I learned more about this when I took a class through MATC. It was called Agriculture and Societies. So it just helped discuss modern day farming techniques and how subsidies are used and how farmers' lives really aren't that great and they're not really even farmers anymore because everything is it's factory like it's a factory, and we as Americans and our governments and these big corporations, they want us to produce meat quickly and efficiently, and we want the animals to grow bigger, faster, and more cheap. So I'll go into summarizing the book, and bear with me because I'm not that great at it, but it Forward begins the book by discussing our relationship with dogs and how some civilizations view dogs as no more than we view livestock. And this is a really main this is a main part of the book in that we treat dogs one way, so why wouldn't we treat other animals the same way? Or why wouldn't we treat dogs the same way that we treat other animals, livestock, for example? Because everything is equal, everything, although instincts may be different, everything can process thoughts and everything, is pretty intellectual. So he regularly discusses the conflict between traditional meat consuming and the developing traditions of vegetarianism. So by doing this, he discusses his childhood and his grandma, who was a Jewish woman, and she was very set in her ways, and she said that she would never eat pork if her life depended on it. So it shows how dedicated she really was. And he even goes to discuss his father and how his father, had them growing up on non-conventional ways of preparing food. Like they would eat tofu, they would eat turkey burgers, they would eat buckwheat. And these facts help paint the image that influenced Forward to make the choices he makes to this day. He goes on to provide facts about firsthand experiences and even very reliable primary sources. Um, these facts and statistics by were provided by animal rights activists, factory farm workers, ranchers, and family members of said subjects, and they all help to reveal issues of our current day system and the solutions or lack of solutions made. So he goes into discussing how he raided factory farms and how he saw the treatment of these animals firsthand and how he talked to people who witnessed treatment of these animals firsthand, and he reveals that these animals don't live very good lives up until their death. They kind of suffer, and it's he uses this book to make people aware about where food comes from and how it is produced and the process of production. So um, he ends the book basically by discussing why he has vowed to not eat meat and what it means to him. So he doesn't push vegetarianism on anyone, and supports he supports people who eat meat, and he just suggests that maybe we should think about the meat that we are consuming, and maybe we should desire to have sustainably produced meat and not so much support these big corporations that aren't concerned about our well-being more as they're concerned about money, because the treatment of these animals, it's poor, and they're crammed together, and they aren't exposed to sunlight or fresh air, and this induces disease, and this disease is, in turn, it comes to us, and big super viruses are created, and eventually it has the probability of wiping out a very large number of people in this population. So he uses real life accounts and facts to resonate with the reader and force them to either question what they consume or question why they consume it, which I think is very important because he is holding people accountable. He's telling people that we should not be ignorant because ignorance is not bliss, and we should not be. Well, we as a society have a habit of, we know that what we're eating are animals, and we know that they are being processed, but we have a habit of forgetting and burying that knowledge so that it's more comfortable for us to eat meat. And restaurants bring meat out prepared, and meat is advertised prepared. It's never advertised as an animal, and the treatment is always painted, like it's just this facade that these animals are treated very well and that the farmer knows them individually, when in reality these are animals that are just packed like a bunch of sardines in farm buildings, and millions of genes are lost, and it's not sustainable. And even with fish, they are either caught wild, and when they are caught wild, it's not in a very humane way, or they're farmed, and they're living in really gross water, and it induces disease. And when fish are fished, thousands of species are killed, and it's nothing about the way that we farm right now is nothing about the way that we farm right now is sustainable, which is not good, because we have a habit of saying that we're trying to fight hunger, when in reality everything that we're doing that's not sustainable causes hunger. So my analysis is, although this book can be assumed as one-sided, I believe that it can be read by anyone, because Forward, he provides supporting points as well as opposing points in every topic he discusses. As soon as I picked this up, I was like, this is going to be an extremist book. This is going to be radical. I'm not going to like this because he's going to be pushing his viewpoint on me. But that is not what I gathered from this at all. And that in itself takes the book from being an extremist book to a realistic and practical one. Anyone who is against vegetarianism can read this and find valuable points and learn a lot, and even people who despise meat eaters, they can take this and absorb so much information. So I learned a lot, and it's hard to brief it what I learned, but to brief it, Forward touches on major aspects of livestock lives, like chickens, turkeys, swine, cattle, and fish. All of these factory farmed animals rarely see daylight and rarely get to breathe fresh air. They are all subjected to disease and ultimately live painful lives. So because of this, they have to take antibiotics. And we as humans, we aren't given antibiotics regularly, because if we are, bacteria will build up a resistance and antibiotics won't help us. So if we're consuming an animal that is consuming these drugs, we're indirectly consuming it. And statistically, people are becoming more sick, and people are not as healthy, and they're going through growth spurts a lot earlier, and we're not even really sure what these drugs do to us, but we're slowly starting to find out. So the way that we're farming is really unnatural, and it's taking a toll on not only the environment but societies in general. So we need to go back to the conventional way of farming, and ranching that is treating each animal as an individual. And to conclude, I would say that this book can be read by anyone. This book, it's awesome. This book is awesome. I have been trying to become a vegetarian for a few months now, and I fail. Inevitably, I always fail. But after reading this, I think that I'm gonna be a lot more strict in what I eat and how I eat, because this has educated me so much. This has opened my eyes to the treatment of animals and how that treatment, it affects us. It might be indirect, but it affects us because this is our health and this is our lives and this is our planet, you know? The way that we farm now is livestock, they're producing 30% of greenhouse gases. So they are contributing immensely to global warming, and it's not, none of this is sustainable. And we need to learn how to be sustainable, and we need to learn to support smaller farmers and not give big corporations all of this money because they don't have our well being or the earth's well being in their mind, if that makes sense. So, to conclude, I would just say that vegetarian or not, this is an awesome book to read. You'll learn a lot about modern day farming practices, and it's going to open your eyes to the devastation, and it's going to basically make you feel a little bit ignorant, but towards the end, it's going to make you question a lot. It's going to make you question, what is it that I'm eating and why? You know, this is a really good book. And if you do decide that you are going to read this book, I just want to ask you, what did you do when you learned the truth about eating animals?